The Zaxian fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect attack formation, their crystalline ships gleaming against the backdrop of New Terra's atmosphere. Admiral Sarax allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The human colony would fall within hours, adding another victory to the collective's unstoppable expansion. Multiple civilian vessels attempting emergency departure, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with anticipation. No significant military presence detected. Sarax's compound eyes narrowed. The intelligence reports had promised at least token resistance. The humans were resourceful vermin. They never left their colonies completely undefended. Still, he wouldn't question his good fortune. Begin the attack pattern. Target their orbital infrastructure first, then. Admiral. The sensor officer's crystalline carapace vibrated with alarm. Detecting unusual gravitational distortions, origin unknown. Space itself seemed to shiver, like heat waves rising from desert sand. A section of void approximately 800 meters long simply darkened. Not the darkness of space, but something deeper, as if that section of reality had been painted over with pure absence. Then it moved. The vessel, if it could be called that, accelerated with impossible grace, leaving no engine trail, no radiation signature, nothing their sensors could lock onto. It was simply there, then elsewhere, defying every known law of physics. Impossible, Sarax whispered. It matches no known configuration. The dark ship passed straight through their front line of destroyers. Not between them, through them, as if the laws of solid matter were mere suggestions. The destroyer's weapons immediately went dark, their engines sputtering to idle. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only, in perfect Zaxian. A calm human voice filled the bridge. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Schrödinger. Your vessels have entered restricted space and demonstrated hostile intent against a civilian population. You have exactly 30 seconds to power down your weapons and engines. This is your only warning. Sarax's mandibles clacked in derision. One ship against his fleet of 40. Launch all fighters. Concentrate fire on. The dark vessel blinked, simultaneously appearing at 6 different points around his fleet. Impossible readings flooded the sensor displays as space itself began to warp and twist. Fighter squadrons found themselves gently but firmly relocated outside the combat zone, their weapons transformed into abstract sculptures of flowing metal. Capital ships spun helplessly as localized gravity wells shifted and pulsed. Weapon systems across the fleet reported simultaneous failures, their power cores reconfiguring themselves into miniature art installations. 28 seconds had passed. Admiral, his tactical officer's voice cracked. We've lost weapons on all ships. Engines are responding erratically. They're rewriting our technology faster than our systems can compensate. The dark vessel consolidated back into a single form, hovering before Sarax's command ship. Now he could see strange patterns flowing across its hull, like oil on water, but suggesting dimensions his mind couldn't quite grasp. 29, the human voice noted calmly. Your call, Admiral. Sarax stared at the tactical display. His mighty fleet had been reduced to drifting hulks, not through violence, but through what seemed like casual reality manipulation. None of his crew had been harmed. They'd simply been rendered completely impotent as a fighting force. Power down all systems, he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Transmit surrender protocols. Wise choice, Captain Chen responded. We'll escort you to the nearest collective border outpost. Oh, and we took the liberty of upgrading your life support systems while we were making adjustments. You'll find they're 23% more efficient now. Consider it a gift. As his fleet began the humiliating retreat, Sarax couldn't shake the feeling that everything he thought he knew about humanity's technological capabilities had been horrifyingly wrong. The stories of their mysterious ships that could bend reality, they weren't exaggerations. They were understatements. Later, in his preliminary report to High Command, he wrote only one line. The myths were true. May the Collective have mercy on us all. The Grand Archive of the Collective buzzed with activity as Senior Archivist Angstera reviewed the latest reports flooding in from across known space. Her iridescent wings twitched with agitation as she sorted through account after account, each more incredible than the last. A merchant convoy in the Carina sector claimed a dark vessel had appeared from nowhere, eliminated a pirate fleet by turning their weapons into crystalline flowers, then vanished while broadcasting ancient human music. A research station near the Persis Void reported their entire defense grid had been temporarily transformed into what they described as a synchronized swimming performance of pure energy. Most disturbing, she muttered, her antenna vibrating as she added another report to her compilation. This one described the mysterious ship appearing simultaneously in 3 different star systems, apparently to deliver upgraded medical technology to colonies suffering from a viral outbreak. The door to her research chamber hummed open. High Counselor Vextor entered, his ceremonial armor catching the light from the holographic displays. "Tell me, Archivist, what have you learned about this Schrödinger?" Angstara gestured with her upper limbs, causing the air around them to fill with floating data streams. "The vessel appears to operate on principles that defy our understanding of physics, Honored One. It demonstrates capabilities we previously considered impossible." "Explain." "The ship seems to exist in a state of quantum uncertainty on a macroscopic scale. It can be simultaneously present and absent, solid and incorporeal. It manipulates gravity, space, and matter as easily as we might shape clay." She paused, selecting a particular data stream. "But what truly concerns me is the pattern." The High Counselor's compound eyes narrowed. "Pattern?" "Yes. Every encounter follows a similar framework. The ship appears in response to a crisis. Pirates, natural disasters, hostile military actions. It resolves the situation with overwhelming technological superiority, but never causes casualties. It then leaves behind gifts, upgraded technology, scientific insights, even art installations." She brought up a holographic model showing the ship's known appearances. "They're teaching us, Honored One. Each demonstration shows us new possibilities, new ways of understanding reality itself. But they're being selective about what they reveal. You believe they possess even greater capabilities." The human captain, this Sarah Chen, told Admiral Surax they were operating at minimal capacity. "Given what we've seen them accomplish at minimal capacity, the implications are unsettling." Vextor moved closer to the displays, his armored carapace reflecting the shifting data streams. "The Collective has always considered humans to be technologically inferior. How did we miss this level of advancement? That's the most fascinating part." Angstera's wings buzzed with excitement despite her trepidation. "According to our deep space monitoring stations, there was no gradual progression, no steady advancement we failed to notice. It's as if they simply jumped. One day they were building conventional ships, the next they had vessels that could rewrite local reality. Impossible. With respect, Honored One, we should strike that word from our vocabulary where humans are concerned. They've demonstrated that our definition of impossible is embarrassingly limited." A new alert flashed across the displays. Another sighting, this time at the edge of collective space. The Schrödinger had apparently appeared to assist a stranded colony ship, not by repairing its engines, but by temporarily altering the nature of space-time around it to make fuel efficiency irrelevant. "They're not just showing us what they can do," Angstera whispered, her antennae quivering. "They're showing us what we could become. Each demonstration, each gift of technology. It's like they're leaving breadcrumbs, leading us towards some greater understanding." The High Counselor absorbed this in silence, his compound eyes reflecting the swirling data. Finally, he spoke. "Continue your analysis, Archivist, but add one more parameter to your investigation. Honored One? Find out why they chose now to reveal themselves. A species doesn't hide this level of technological advancement without reason, and they don't reveal it without purpose." He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. What was that human music they broadcast to the pirate fleet? Angstara checked her notes. According to our cultural databases, it was something called Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. And its significance? Unknown, honored one. Though the human crew appeared to find it extremely amusing. As the High Counselor departed, Angstara returned to her analysis, adding yet another report to her growing collection. Somewhere out there, a ship that shouldn't exist was rewriting the rules of reality, leaving upgraded technology and inexplicable human jokes in its wake. She had a feeling they were all missing the punchline. Admiral Cathax stood before the assembled fleet commanders, his carapace bearing the distinguished scars of 100 battles. The holographic displays surrounding them showed the latest tracking data on the vessel that had turned the collective's understanding of warfare upside down. The human ship follows no consistent pattern. He gestured to the star charts with one of his primary limbs. It appears randomly across 12 sectors, demonstrates capabilities that mock our finest technologies, then vanishes while making what humans call dad jokes. The assembled commanders chittered nervously. They'd all read the reports, seen the footage. Some had personally witnessed the Schrödinger in action. None of them were eager to encounter it again. High Command has authorized the formation of Task Force Omega, Cathax continued. Our mission is simple: track down this vessel and determine the full extent of human technological advancement. We must understand what we're dealing with before they decide to do more than simply embarrass us. Admiral. Commander Ixtal raised a limb. With respect, how do we track a ship that can exist in multiple quantum states? That can phase through solid matter and rewrite local physics at will. Cathax's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. By thinking like humans, he activated a new holographic display. They're pattern seekers, storytellers. Everything they do has meaning, even if that meaning is simply to confuse or amuse. Our xenopsychologists have been analyzing every encounter. The display showed a complex web of interconnected events. The Schrödinger doesn't just appear randomly. It shows up where it can make the biggest impact with the smallest action. Pirates threatening a vital trade route. It appears, disables them without casualties, and leaves their ship's computer systems playing something called elevator music. Hostile fleet approaching a colony. It arrives, demonstrates overwhelming superiority, then upgrades their technology as a parting gift. They're teaching us. A voice came from the back of the chamber. The assembled commanders turned to see Senior Archivist Angstara entering, her wings folded respectfully. My apologies for the interruption, Admiral, but my latest analysis confirms it. Each appearance builds upon the last, introducing new concepts, new possibilities. They're leading us somewhere. Cathax nodded. Precisely. And that's how we'll find them. We're going to create a situation they can't ignore, one that fits their pattern of intervention. But this time, we'll be ready. The plan, when he laid it out, was audacious. The task force would split into 3 groups, each creating a different crisis that would appeal to the Schrödinger's demonstrated behavior patterns. A refugee crisis in the Carina sector, a seemingly unstoppable plague in the Perseus arm, and a rogue AI threatening to destabilize a dozen systems. All carefully controlled, of course, Cathax assured them. No actual lives at risk, but it must appear genuine enough to attract their attention. And when they appear, Ixtal asked, we observe, we learn, and we attempt to open a dialogue. Cathax's compound eyes gleamed. They'd been playing with us, demonstrating their superiority while hiding their true capabilities. It's time we showed them we can play their game. The operation began 3 solar cycles later. Task Force Omega deployed across the designated sectors, setting their elaborate stage. Cathax commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, its sensors modified specifically to track quantum anomalies. They didn't have to wait long. The first sign was a subtle distortion in the quantum field, barely detectable even with their enhanced sensors. Then, in the space between moments, the Schrödinger simply was. It hung in space before the Eternal Dawn, its dark hull seeming to drink in starlight. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission. Text only." The message appeared on their main display. Clever setup. The refugee crisis was a bit obvious, but we appreciated the plague scenario's attention to detail. "Shall we discuss why you're really looking for us?" Before Kithax could respond, his tactical officer's voice rose in alarm. "Sir, the ship, it's changing." The Schrodinger's hull began to shift, patterns of impossibility flowing across its surface. It grew larger, smaller, existed in multiple configurations simultaneously. Reality seemed to bend around it like light through a prism. A new message appeared. "We thought it was time for a proper demonstration. Don't worry, we've taken the liberty of upgrading your sensors. You'll want to record this." Kithax watched as space itself began to dance. The hunt, he realized, had just become something else entirely. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. The quantum storm that erupted around Task Force Omega defied description. Reality fractured into prismatic shards as the Schrödinger demonstrated just how limited their understanding of physics truly was. Kithax watched in stunned silence as his fleet's sensors recorded phenomena that should have been impossible. The human vessel split into 12 identical copies, each one existing in a different quantum state. Space folded between them like origami, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. His scientists would later spend months analyzing the data and still only grasp a fraction of what they witnessed. Receiving broadcast from the Schrödinger, "Admiral," his communications officer announced. Video format. The holoscreen materialized, showing the bridge of the human vessel. Captain Sarah Chen sat in a command chair that seemed to be made of flowing light, her uniform bearing insignia that shifted and changed as they watched. Behind her, human crew members worked at stations that appeared to be interfacing directly with quantum fields. "Admiral Kithax," Chen smiled. "I appreciate the elaborate trap, but we need to skip the usual dance. Something's coming. Something that makes our little demonstrations look like children's toys." Before Kithax could respond, alarms blared across his bridge. Multiple quantum ruptures detected. His sensor officer called out. "Scale unprecedented. Sir, they're appearing throughout the sector." Space tore open in a dozen locations. Through the rifts poured ships of impossible geometry, their hulls covered in patterns that violated Euclidean space. Kithax's compound eyes widened in horror as his tactical displays tried to make sense of the invaders. "The axiom breakers," Chen's voice was grim. "We've been preparing for them for decades. Why do you think we've been so carefully demonstrating our capabilities, teaching you bit by bit about quantum engineering? What are they? A species that discovered quantum manipulation technology before they developed wisdom. They don't just break physics, they break reality itself. They've destroyed 3 galaxies already, leaving wounded spacetime in their wake. We've been trying to prepare your civilization for this moment." The invading fleet began its attack. Ships simply ceased to exist where their weapons struck. Others were twisted into Mobius strips of metal and screaming crew members. Reality itself began to fray around the impact points. "This is why we revealed ourselves now," Chen continued. "Your civilization was approaching a quantum technology breakthrough. We needed to guide that development, ensure you understood the principles before you stumbled into them blindly. The axiom breakers were drawn to your experiments. We've been hiding you from them, but we can't anymore." Kithax watched as a collective cruiser was turned inside out, its crew exposed to the void. "How do we fight this?" "You don't. Not yet. But we can buy you time to evacuate your worlds. The Schrödinger isn't just a ship, Admiral. It's a prototype, a testbed for technology designed to fight enemies who break reality itself." As if to demonstrate, the Schrödinger began to move. Its quantum duplicates collapsed into a single point of infinite probability. Space twisted around it as it engaged the invaders. Where the axiom breakers broke physics, the human vessel seemed to rewrite it. creating zones where conventional reality reasserted itself. We'll hold them here. Chen's voice was steel. Get your people out, and remember everything we've shown you. Humanity learned these lessons the hard way. We had our own brush with quantum manipulation before we understood the consequences. We've spent centuries preparing for this moment. The Schrodinger's hull blazed with impossible light as it engaged 3 enemy vessels simultaneously. Space itself seemed to scream as opposing quantum manipulations fought for dominance. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "I'm detecting." "Sir, I'm detecting thousands of quantum signatures, similar to the Schrödinger, but more." New rifts opened in space. Through them came human ships, each one a different configuration of quantum impossibility. Some phase shifted through reality. Others existed in multiple time states simultaneously. All of them moved with the same precise grace as the Schrödinger. "Did you think we only had one?" Chen's smile was fierce. "Humanity's been building this fleet in secret for 100 years. Now you know why we kept ourselves isolated, why we seemed so technologically primitive. We weren't building weapons, Admiral. We were building reality's immune system." Thax watched as the human quantum fleet engaged the axiom breakers. Space itself became a battlefield as 2 fundamentally different approaches to quantum manipulation clashed. One sought to break reality. The other had learned to bend it, guide it, heal it. "We'll hold the line," Chen promised. "Get your people to safety. And when you're ready, we'll teach you how to fight back, properly this time." As his fleet began emergency evacuation protocols, Thax realized that humanity hadn't been demonstrating superiority all these months. They'd been recruiting allies for an impossible war. 6 months after the Battle of Broken Space, as historians would later call it, Senior Archivist Nxterra stood in the newly constructed Quantum Academy on New Terra. Through the crystalline windows, she could see human and collective ships moving together in precise formation, practicing the delicate art of reality manipulation. The Schrödinger hung in high orbit, its dark hull now a familiar sight. But it was no longer alone. Collective shipyards, guided by human expertise, had begun producing their own quantum vessels. They weren't as advanced as their human counterparts. Those would take decades to master. But they represented the first steps toward a true defense against the axiom breakers. Remarkable progress. Captain Chen's voice came from behind her. The human commander had become a regular visitor to the academy, overseeing the careful transfer of quantum engineering knowledge. "Your people have a natural intuition for quantum mechanics that rivals our own." Nxterra's wings buzzed with pride. "We had excellent teachers. Though I must admit, some of our scientists are still trying to understand why you chose to introduce these concepts through what you call practical jokes." Chen laughed. "Humor is a powerful teaching tool. It helps break down preconceptions, makes the impossible seem possible. Besides, the look on Admiral Serax's face when we turned his fleet's weapons into abstract art was priceless." A holographic display activated, showing the current state of the quantum barrier humanity had helped establish around collective space. It was beautiful in its complexity. Layers of altered space-time, creating a shield that would warn of any further incursions by the axiom breakers. "The barrier is holding," Nxterra noted, "though we still don't understand how you managed to create it so quickly." "That's the interesting thing about quantum engineering," Chen smiled. "Time becomes flexible. Let's just say we had longer to prepare than you might think." She paused, looking out at the ships practicing their maneuvers. "The real question is whether you're ready for the next step." Nxterra's antennae twitched with curiosity. "There's more. The axiom breakers aren't the only threat out there. Reality is vast, and not everything in it plays by the rules we consider natural. Humanity spent centuries preparing for them because they were the threat we could see coming. But there are others." A new hologram appeared, showing galaxies beyond their own. "That's why we need allies. Species who can learn to work with reality rather than break it. The collective has proven itself worthy of that trust. You honor us, Terra's wings fluttered. Though I suspect there's something specific you're leading up to. Chen's smile widened. Smart. Yes, we've detected something approaching from the galactic core. It makes the axiom breakers look primitive in comparison. We'll need every quantum-capable species we can find to face it. How long do we have? That's the trick with quantum temporal mechanics. Chen gestured, and space seemed to ripple around her hand. The answer is either 3 centuries or 3 weeks, depending on how you look at it. Reality gets funny when you start playing with the deep rules. Outside, a training vessel successfully executed its first quantum shift, briefly existing in 3 states simultaneously. Cheers erupted from the observation deck. Your people are ready, Chen said. The real question is, are you ready to help us find and teach others? The Schrödinger was never just a warship. It's a teaching tool, a demonstration platform. There are other species out there approaching their own quantum breakthroughs. They'll need guidance, just like you did. Terra considered this. You want us to become teachers ourselves. Partners, Chen corrected. Humanity can't protect reality alone. We need allies who understand not just the technology, but the responsibility that comes with it. Species who can look at the fundamental laws of space-time and see not weapons, but tools for creation and preservation. She gestured to the quantum barrier. Look what we've built together already. Imagine what else we might achieve. Through the window, the Schrödinger began to shift, its hull flowing like liquid darkness. But now Terra could see the patterns in its movement, understand the principles behind its impossible nature. What had once seemed like magic had become comprehensible science. Besides, Chen added with a mischievous grin, we've got some great jokes to teach them. Terra's mandibles clicked in what had become her approximation of human laughter. She understood now why humanity had chosen humor as a teaching tool. It made the impossible seem possible, the frightening become fascinating. As she watched the quantum ships dance through space, she realized that this was just the beginning. Reality itself was changing, and they were changing with it. The collective had entered a new age, not as humanity's students, but as their partners in protecting existence itself. And somewhere out there, in the depths between galaxies, other species were approaching their own quantum revelations. They would need guidance, understanding, and perhaps most importantly, a few good jokes about quantum uncertainty. The universe, after all, had a sense of humor. They just had to learn how to speak its language.